Hello, listeners. Before we start, I just want to remind you, you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are listening to the Nighttime Podcast.
It's now been 13 weeks since 4-year-old Jack and his 6-year-old sister, Lilly Sullivan, were reported missing from their rural Nova Scotia home. As we detailed in this series of Nighttime episodes, the children's mother and stepfather told police that when they awoke around 10 a.m. on Friday, May 2nd, Jack and Lilly were gone. Since then, the case has gained international attention and teeters somewhere between a missing persons case and a criminal investigation. In this episode, Madelayne Klein and I are going to continue to break down the prior week's developments in this ever-evolving case. And I must say, this week is an interesting one. We're going to start by discussing the RCMP's latest press update on their investigation, and then we'll do a deep dive type review of the latest public statements made by someone close to the case. Janny McKenzie is the mother of the children's stepdad, Daniel, and she lives in a trailer in the backyard of the child's home. It's a vantage point that led to her being one of, if not the last person, to hear the children before they went missing. Janny recently offered a long-form interview to CBC News that included a tour of the property. And tonight, Madelayne Klein and I are going to reflect on many of the interesting things that were said. So let's get into it. Tonight, in this episode of Nighttime, we'll again be discussing the developments during the 13th week of asking, where are Jack and Lilly Sullivan?
Do you think your son had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lilly?
No, I don't believe Daniel had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lilly. Our heart don't lie, and my heart is telling me that my kid did not have nothing to do with this, and I had nothing to do with this.
Ms. Madelayne Klein, this is our 9th episode covering the disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan. This one will be recording just about on the 13th week anniversary of their disappearance. Anything that's been standing out to you, any surprises you have going into the 13th week of the search for Jack and Lilly?
One of the big surprises for me is just general public opinion on how many people think they're still alive somewhere. That really surprised me.
Yeah.
I was kind of paging through the comments from our last episode. So I guess it's been 3 weeks, but I'm really surprised at how many people are convinced they're still alive and just being stowed away somewhere.
Yeah, well, it is a possibility, but as far as the discussion from professionals and the investigators, that doesn't seem to be likely from their point of view, although it would be an amazing outcome, like we said, if it turned out that they were being, if you read comments online, you're going to see things like, someone connected to any one of the family members is like hiding them, and it's a way to protect the kids from this breakup, and you hear all sorts of things. I actually, over the last couple days, I've been going through a lot of videos on YouTube and articles and comments, and I believe the public discourse is just has twisted and turned itself into this incredibly toxic, misshapen thing. I will hardly even watch or read anything, and I get a lot of emails from people as well, like, Jordan, did you see this alleged detail? And it's like, they link to a TikTok video, and
oh no,
that's explaining this major break in the case that's about to happen that for some reason the media is silent on. I just feel like it's turned into, in a lot of corners of the internet, this case has turned into like the setting for fan fiction. That's how I put it. It's, I see a lot of that, and that's what, and our episodes are so few and far between because I don't want to get into any of the stuff that really can't be proven. I'm trying to keep our series on the rails, covering the facts and making it so that if you listen to 2 or 3 episodes ago, we're not talking about something that's insane and proven to be false.
Right. Well, and people need to understand what the word credible means, because like you can give me you can link a source all you want, but like you said, if it's some random person's TikTok video, That's not a credible source.
Yeah. And I also have realized another word that people could use a refresher on outside of credible is the word update. And I'm going to start the episode with that. Is the Nova Scotia RCMP have been giving fairly regular updates to this case in the way of press releases where they summarize what they've done so far and how many outstanding tasks they have. Every time those updates are released, I see comments like, I can't believe the RCMP is calling this an update. You know, they're not saying anything. They need to tell us what leads they have, what's developing. The word update simply just means to like get something up to date. I'm going to read you the July 16th RCMP update that they released in this case. So this would have been released just about 9 days ago at the time of recording. The Nova Scotia RCMP's intensive investigation into the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan continues. Led by Northeast Nova RCMP's Major Crime Unit under the Missing Persons Act, the investigation involves RCMP teams from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario, as well as national and provincial partners across Canada. Key efforts of the case include, and here's where they list their tasks. In every one of these updates, they'll update these numbers. They've been reviewing approximately 5,000 video files obtained from Lansdowne Station and surrounding areas. They're assessing over 600 tips received from the public. They've conducted interviews of more than 60 people, including polygraph testing in some cases. And they've conducted forensic examination of seized materials, including the pink blanket that was found near Lansdowne Road, and they've obtained judicial authorization to search materials and devices. And now they're going to quote someone. Right now, there are over 800 active tasks in this investigation, says Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon. Tremendous amounts of careful, deliberate, investigative work is underway by people here at home and in other parts of Canada. Our collective efforts will continue every day until we determine with certainty the circumstances surrounding Lilly and Jack's disappearance. So this is the most up-to-date statement we have from the RCMP. Let's talk about it a little bit, starting with over 5,000 video files.
I think lots of people underestimate just how massive that really is, and how incredibly time consuming it was and is to go through such a vast number of video files.
Yeah.
Someone's got to watch all that.
That's right. Putting it in chronological order, lining everything up, and just and simply just the manpower of sitting there and watching through it and skimming through it. I wonder how many of those videos were received from members of the public after their call out. Because I guess it was about a month and a half ago now, they've called out for anyone in that area to supply them with video from, doorbell, dash cams, security cameras, any of that stuff. I bet you they got a lot from that. They would have gotten a lot from local businesses or businesses in the area, or any kind of traffic control cameras. I'm sure there wouldn't be any too close to the children's home, but likely on like the highway leading in that direction. They would have so much. And the other thing is, and this comes up a lot in investigations, is a lot of security camera and stuff. It has timestamps down the bottom that show you what time it is, but they're never like absolutely perfect. So you often have, if you get 10 videos from 10 different sources, all the timestamps are slightly off from each other. It really creates an issue.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised at how many people in that rural area have cameras, be it security cameras or trail cams. I had no idea that was a thing.
It's getting more and more popular now with like whether you want Ring video doorbells or the million companies that kind of compete with Ring for that sort of thing. It's so much more well known now. I feel like when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, our home security was the motion sensor lights, where if someone moved, your spotlights would turn on. Today's equivalent is the video cameras that send like a text to your phone with the video and all that stuff.
I thank God every day my parents didn't have one of those, but that's another story for another time. But like more specifically, I'm surprised that like a rural area would have so much footage. Like I can see in the city, like weird stuff goes on.
They steal your packages from Amazon.
Right,
and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe I'm just ignorant as to what goes on out there, but like maybe they want to see wildlife or something, see who's wandering through the yard. But yeah, I was really surprised that like someone would have a trail cam. But useful in this situation.
Certainly. What about interviews with over 60 people? We've kind of brainstormed this idea before of who we would talk to. Of course, the immediate family, neighbors, people at school, maybe some people who ran into the kids during that last sighting the night before they were reported missing. But 60 is I think more than I expected.
And it's not only more than we expected, but many of those people were probably interviewed more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So like
That's a good
just
point.
60 people, that there's probably over 100 interviews.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Place. Yeah.
And then the last kind of number that I want to talk about in this update is Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon. And he ends it by talking about what work is left to be done. They're going to keep working until they come to an answer with what's happened. But he does say there are over 800 active tasks. So for anyone who thinks that this case is cold or going cold, there are 800 things that that RCMP are still going to do, and half of those things are probably going to create more tasks for them to do. So I feel like, although what they release may not satisfy the curiosity of many people following this case, the RCMP is crossing all their T's, dotting all their I's. If there is an answer to be found, I think it will be found by their work. That said, 13 weeks into this, every day that goes by, I'm more and more thinking, like, is this going to be a case that doesn't get solved?
I know. I go back and forth because it's been so long. You know that like behind the scenes and all the information they know but can't release, like, you know, it is a tangled web. Like there's a lot more than just meets the eye for this case. And we've mentioned it before, but they know more, and we're not entitled to find out all their information as they find it out. But yeah, the fact that this, like, it seemed so cut and dry at the beginning, and I don't think anyone could have thought that it would go on this long with no answers.
No, certainly not. But let's get into it. Other than the RCMP update, the meat and potatoes of our episode this week is going to be discussing an interview with someone close to this case that appeared on CBC News. It's an interview with Janny McKenzie. That is Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather's mother. So this is the children's step-grandmother. And she's a very unique person in this story. The insight she gives is definitely worth discussion. And if anyone missed this interview, then you're gonna hear a lot of interesting things in this episode. Let me set it up this way. Anyone who has seen photos of the property, there's this kind of like rustic fence around the backyard with like swings and stuff. And then there's a little like what looks like a shed there. It's actually the step-grandmother's RV that abuts that play area. Her proximity to that play area makes things really interesting because it leads to her being one of, if not the last person to hear the children before they were reported missing. Now, Janny appeared on CBC, and she gave a tour of the property, and she answered a lot of questions related to that fateful day on the 2nd of May when the children were reported missing. She was right there from the time Daniel ran outside screaming for the children. She was right there before they went missing when she heard them in the backyard playing or doing whatever they were doing. And she was there when the police arrived. She's been involved in the search. And certainly, she's been on Facebook seeing what a lot of people say about this case. She gets into all of it in the CBC interview. So what I've done is I've taken a few pieces of the interview. We'll play them one by one and just talk through them. But first, let's have our break so we don't get interrupted as we're listening to Janny McKenzie speak. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll get into it. So Madelayne, we have a bit of an adventure ahead of us here going through Janny McKenzie's interview with CBC. As I mentioned, the full interview I think is about 9 minutes long. I have just some of the highlights or the most interesting moments here for us to go through one by one. Before we start listening in on these clips, do you want to give like just an overview of your thoughts on the entirety of her interview?
There were a couple aspects of it that I did find really surprising. The patio door, and we'll get there.
Yes, she does demonstrate the patio door. We will hear it.
And it is not silent. And the children's play area, because, and like I said, we'll get into it, but she shows us like where the kids always played and where she could hear them playing. But way back at the beginning, I said like, oh, the kids are probably in and out all the time. Like they live on essentially an acreage. That's what I would be doing if I were a child living there. And you said no, like they're actually not known to always be outside. So I was like,
When I said that though, I think it's more so like they're not known to be outside alone, in this backyard area. But they wouldn't really have to be because they have their step grandmother, Janny McKenzie, who lives right there and I don't believe works. Like I think she's there all the time she has dogs and stuff or a dog. So I think they would be around. Then Malaya, who is a stay-at-home mom, Daniel Martel at the home, and he was only, loosely employed, only worked a couple days a week. So I think there was probably not a lot of time for the children to be outside alone. I'm guessing, but
okay.
Let's get into it here. Let's start with the first clip that I'll play is Janny describing the morning of the children's disappearance. And this is her basically just going through step by step everything she remembers the morning that the children were reported missing.
So it's the morning of May 2nd. Take me through what happened.
Okay, I was up at 6 o'clock, sat in there and had my tea. And then on Facebook, 7 o'clock, I get up, come over here, fed my chickens. My brother, Ron, called me at 8:48 and asked me if I wanted to go to town with him. And I said no. I said I'm staying home. I said I'm going back to bed. Okay, I went and I laid down. Next thing you know, my dog started barking and the kids were out in the yard. Now, if you can see, there's 2 swings where the kids play. My bedroom is right there. The next thing I heard is I heard Daniel yelling. He was yelling for Jack and Lilly. I didn't get up because I thought he was yelling for Jack and Lilly to get in the house. So the next thing you know, came out of the trailer after I heard Daniel, about, I'd say, 10 minutes after I heard him, I come out of the trailer. I opened up the door. Malaya was standing right here with Meadow on her hip. And I come out and I said, "What's up?" She said, "Jack and Lilly are missing." I said, "How long?" She said, "About 20 minutes." I closed the door, got my boots on, came out here, ran up in the woods.
Going to stop that clip there because this is where she begins to get involved in the initial search. But just hearing her talk out that morning, she gets up, she feeds the chickens. Her brother calls at 8:48. She goes, lays back down in bed. Her brother, I should say, wanted her to go into town. She didn't want to do it. She went home, went back in the house, went to bed. Shortly after, her dogs react to the kids outside. She hears the kids playing. Shortly after that, she hears Daniel screaming for the children. She gets out of her place and realizes what's going on. And it's at that point the search starts. But the things that I find interesting about this is it does help to set a bit of a timeline, confirm a few details. I thought it was just Daniel and Malaya that heard the children outside playing that morning. We now have a third person, if not maybe even a fourth person, because Janny McKenzie has this story, but her brother Ron, he calls at 8:48 to ask her to go to town. She doesn't want to do it, but in that news clip, she holds up her phone to the news camera to show, like, see, here's him calling me at 8:48. If you look carefully at the screen, he also calls her back at 10:12, and she talks to him for like a minute and a half. So presumably at 8:48, he could attest to, yeah, I called her. She didn't want to go to town. At 10:12, I called her back, and she was, freaking out because the children were missing and the cops were there. So it really like helps set a timeline if she and Daniel and Malaya are to be believed, if any one of them are to be believed.
Right. But this was another thing that was kind of surprising to me is I didn't think the kids were playing outside at all that morning. I was under the impression that they heard them playing in the house because it was raining.
Yes.
Yeah, I was very surprised to hear that they were like actually playing outside.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think we thought of it as Daniel and Malaya heard them in the other room, like in the living room or
Hmm.
something like that. But I think it's probably just more of clarifying the details. Like if we went back to those early interviews, I'd be interested how Daniel or Malaya described it, hearing them in the other room or hearing them outside of the room. Like it could just be a matter of hearing those terms or what terms they used,
Right,
or
exactly.
maybe or maybe Daniel and Malaya heard them in another room. They slip outside, and it's at that point that Janny hears them in that playground area that's in the backyard.
And all of those events are probably it's probably just their daily routine of what
Mhm,
they do.
mhm. And it's also a very tight timeline
It
because
is.
if at 8:48 when her brother calls and she's out feeding the chickens, the children weren't there, and at just about 10 a.m. they're reported missing, whatever happened within that roughly 1 hour.
Right. And yeah, so she heard them right after this phone call. So let's say between 10 to 9 and 9 o'clock. And then she presumably dozed off. Is that what I got from that clip?
Until she heard Daniel.
Right, until she heard Daniel. So
Yeah, and at which point when Daniel went outside yelling for the kids, Malaya says right about that point she called 911, which was just about 10 a.m. So it's fair to say within that 1 hour, 9 to 10 o'clock is whatever happened.
oh, absolutely. And yeah, I don't know if you're gonna play like the her showing where she was searching, but
Yeah,
regardless, they couldn't have gotten far in an hour, less than an hour.
mhm. No, certainly. Let's get into the next piece of Janny's interview with CBC. So what we just heard was up to the children being missing. In the second clip that I'm going to play is the initial search up until the point that the police get on the scene.
Just right up here. The kids have a little fort that they made out of sticks and fir branches, and that's where they go. You can see them and hear them. We went for walks in the woods. I had to practically carry Jack through the woods because there was no way that he was walking through all that tree falls and bushes. I did this whole area. There's an old road up back. When I got up to the end, to the top of the hill, I met Daniel. And I said to him, I said, did you find them? He said, no. He said, you coming with me? I said, no. I said, I'm going to search this area. Because when she told me the kids were missing, you automatically think they went into the woods. That was my first instinct. So I went up and I did this whole area, this whole wooded area, right up to the top of to the dirt road, came back down here and came back down the side of the road, came back down here and came back up the same spot. I went back into the house. By the time the cops were here, I don't know exactly what time, I didn't take my phone. The cops were here. I was crying because I blame myself for not getting up that morning to see the kids. Because if I would have got up, this wouldn't have never happened. Okay? That's why I was crying.
So her description there wasn't as easy to follow, but in essence, when Malaya tells her the children are missing, she then goes up into the woods, and you heard her describe as well how the children weren't able to easily navigate the woods, so she didn't expect they went too far. She went far enough into the woods to hit that road that we've heard discussed where she finds Daniel. Daniel asks, do you want to come with me further to keep looking? Instead, she wants to go back and continue to search the woods closer to the home, thinking they would be in that area. She does a little bit of searching, doesn't see them, goes back to her property. At this point, the police are arriving, and she sits down on a bench and starts crying, which I can understand the emotion would be so high. But I also find like maybe it's just the way she speaks. She sounds very defensive, which it doesn't mean that she's guilty of something. It's probably more so people all around the world think her kid's involved in doing this horrible thing to her grandchildren. But
Yeah.
just her tone, she sounds very defensive.
And that just might be the way she talks all the time. That's just how she sounds. Yeah, it doesn't help that her child has been scrutinized on the internet for the last 3 months.
And I'm sure now that she's gone public, she's been scrutinized, and she mentioned,
Yes.
my brother called at 8:48. I'm sure there are videos on YouTube about the horrible thing her brother probably did too. Like it's, everyone connected to this.
She's not wrong.
Yeah, I can understand why she'd be defensive, and I can understand why she would sit down and cry. Although in that moment, she probably thought, they're going to turn up, but this is going to be a horrible day. I'm sure when she sat on that bench crying, her worst fear would be that, 13 weeks later, this case would be ongoing.
Absolutely. Oh, she would have never expected that. She probably assumed they'd be home by that afternoon.
Let's move on to the third clip. In this clip, she begins to give a tour of the family's home. And that tour is going to focus a lot on the sliding door to the patio that we've heard discussed so much. The importance of this door is that the idea is that the children went out this back door. The door is, as it glides open, it is so quiet that from the bedroom that Daniel and Malaya would have been in, they likely would not have heard the children go out back. So let's listen to Janny give a sort of tour of the home, focusing on the patio door.
We've heard a lot about the patio door.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go see that.
Sure.
So this is the patio
This
door
is the patio door
that Jack and Lilly would have
that Jack and Lilly came out of.
Okay. And so tell us why we've heard about the patio door.
Because everybody's saying on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok that the patio door makes a noise, and why they didn't hear the door open. The bedroom is back there. Okay.
That far window.
The
there.
last window is the bedroom.
And so they would have come out this door.
They would have come out this
that
door.
morning.
Yes.
And then they went and played on the swing set.
Yes.
And that's when you heard them.
That's when I heard them.
So I'm going to stop there. That is the part of the tour where we're hearing about the patio door. I think we should talk about this because this has been brought up so much. I don't know how you feel about it, but to me, I feel like the story checks out. That to me, that was a quiet, like maybe average to slightly above average quiet sliding door. And if their bedroom was, say, 2 rooms away, I could see why they wouldn't hear that.
See, my biggest issue with the patio door is I believe the word used at the beginning of the investigation was silent. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very average sounding patio door. It's not silent. And also, I think I'm not sure if trailers, vary trailer to trailer, but I grew up and I had a cabin trailer. You hear a lot. You hear everything. It doesn't really matter how close or far you are. Like you hear the door slam from the porch, even if you're in the back. But that being said, if they were sleeping, which they even said they were kind of dozing on and off with their 18-month-old. So
yeah, they had the baby in the bed, the 3 of them. We don't know, but there could have been a TB on,
right? Exactly,
something going. But who knows? But even if it was completely silent in that room, if they were 2 rooms away, what we heard in that news clip of the journalist slides the door open and shuts it. Although the journalist was being a little gentle, more gentle than I think a Lilly or Jack would have been, I do think I can see why you wouldn't hear that. That wouldn't have woke me up. Slamming a door shut probably would. Sliding that open and shut probably wouldn't.
Especially if it's something they do often, if they're just going outside to play. This sounds like it was totally the norm in that house.
I think more likely what it would have woke me up was Janny's dog barking at the kids on the swings, if that was the case.
Or the silence. When it's too quiet, you're like, hang on.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be what did wake them up. But so far, I don't think there's anything about this interview so far that is, changing my opinions on anything or really contradicting any major fact or detail that Daniel or Malaya had shared. So far everything is making sense, but it's to get the look at, like, we hear so much discussion around these, like the patio door, to actually see the journalist slide it open and shut it. It can put that matter to rest. I think what it is when you see the condition of the house, I picture this sliding door that's just like this rusty metal on metal sound, because this place, I'm just going to say, it doesn't look like it's in very good shape, but so be it. Let's go to the next clip here. I mentioned there that Janny seemed to be, at least in my ear, seems to be coming across as defensive. And again, just to preface that, not defensive in that I think she did something wrong and that she's trying to hide it, more so defensive because people all around her are being blamed of something horrible. In the next clip, she explains to the journalist why she agreed to go on the news and give this tour of the home and walk through her, her morning, the day of the disappearance. Let's hear why she agreed to do this.
I'm not here to lie. The reason why I wanted you guys to come here and do the interview here is to show you exactly where everything took place. And to show people that this is what happened. All the stuff that all the rumors and accusations about us murdering the kids and burying them on the property, this place has been searched thoroughly. The well has been checked, the septic tank, all the barns were searched. My RV was searched 3 times. The trailer was searched. This whole place was searched. If they want to come back and search again, they're more than welcome.
That one's a little intense, eh?
Yes. And, she is, like, it is nice to really put, like, a visual to everything. Because everyone's got, you hear about a story like this and everyone's got a different picture in their head. And I had no idea, like, I had heard rumors of, someone's mom living on the property, but, like, you don't know how actually, like, in close quarters they were until you see this. And yeah, it's nice to visually see everything.
Yeah. I didn't play one part of the interview, but she does describe, and for anyone who listens, the full interview on CBC, which I'll link to in this episode's description. She does kind of show where her trailer is in connection to the driveway to the property. And what I thought about with that is that it's a dirt driveway, a gravel driveway. If a car drove up the driveway, that certainly would have woke her up. I feel like that's something that gets you out of bed when you're not expecting a car and you hear one in your driveway. I have a paved driveway, and if I hear a car out there, or if I think I hear one, I go look out the window. With a gravel driveway, it's just that much louder. And where she's in a small trailer that the driveway leads towards, I feel like that would get her moving if she heard someone pull in.
You took the thought right out of my head. Like, that's exactly what I was going to say, because especially living somewhere like that, I don't want to say you're on high alert, but like, when you hear something out of the ordinary.
And your dog's going to react too.
Exactly. So yeah, that's like, it's nice to visually see this place and the area, but it just brings up more question on like what could have happened. Because and at one other point of the interview, she said, like, these kids are loud. Like, they're always yelling around. They're kids. Like, even when they'd play in the woods, they made that little fort. Like, you heard them. So
yeah, the way she described it is Lilly is just forever saying, "Come on, Jack, come on, Jack," and I can hear that. That's like a big sister will be saying that nonstop.
Absolutely, but yeah, it's so odd. Like, what could have happened to these poor kids?
Yeah, the interview with her makes me think it's unlikely that a car went in the driveway, but it makes me have a bit more faith in the timeline that we got from Daniel and Malaya.
Yeah.
In hearing her address the allegations online, that doesn't surprise me that she's aware of it and bothered by it. Her willingness to go on the news and try to clear the air a little bit, I think that's good. And according to what she says, she's been open with the investigators and would be welcome to them searching again. So I don't know if it's necessary. I would think that they searched that property from top to bottom, but I think whatever happened, the answer to whatever happened is likely not on that property.
Absolutely. Like, at the beginning of the interview, when she's, showing us around where the kids played and where they played in the woods and everything. I was like, well, we know they're not in the woods. And the fact that she heard them and then everything kind of went silent, I was like, someone took them. But then immediately after that thought, I thought, no, like she would hear a car pull up, or she'd hear someone beckoning them or talking to them, even if it's just like a muffled voice. Have you ever stayed in an RV or a camper? You can hear everything outside.
Yeah.
Like it's not like those walls are super, soundproof.
Yeah. And these aren't like nice new RVs.
No.
The home that Daniel and Malaya were in is more like your typical like trailer home. What Janny is staying in is more like an RV that you could tow somewhere or something. So I feel like the main home would have better soundproofing than her little trailer.
Definitely. But hers, like, you'd be able to hear someone sneeze
You would think
outside.
Yeah, but whatever happened seems to have happened within an hour, and it seems like for that to make sense, the children either had to go into the woods and run into somebody or go down to the road and run into somebody. I think one or the other, I think has to have happened. But a couple more clips to get into here before we take our final break. This next clip is her answering the question that, I guess, asking a mother do you think your son is involved in this? I think we know what her answer is going to be, but let's hear her answer the question. Do you think Daniel did something to these kids?
Do you feel as if the finger has been pointed towards you and Daniel?
Yes, I do. Because I live on the property. Come on.
Do you think your son had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lilly?
No, I don't believe Daniel had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lilly. Our heart don't lie, and my heart is telling me that my kid did not have nothing to do with this, and I had nothing to do with this.
Yikes. You can hear emotions running high. Her way of speaking, it's like she's almost shouting at the journalist, but I think the last 13 weeks would have been so hard on her.
She's tired, man.
Oh, yeah, and she's probably ready to just scream it. But what about her? My heart is telling me he had nothing to do with this.
I think that's, I have to keep reminding myself, everyone involved in this situation, we are not dealing with criminal masterminds. Okay. So even if, let's say, in some crazy bizarro world, Daniel was in some way responsible for this, she doesn't know that. She was left out of it. His mom has no clue. If she had information, I don't think she would be able to hide it and cover it up.
It's the impression I get. And for her to say, my heart tells me he's not involved, I would have rather heard an answer like, given the timeline and when I heard it and where he was, it would have been like, that's the way my mind goes. Hearing like my heart tells me that, I wish her answer was more succinct or just more specific, but maybe that's just my taste. There are probably other people who would hear that and be like, a mother's heart would know. And I get that.
I guess, but like my heart has led me astray a few times, so
yeah, that's true.
I would not be trusted in that.
Yeah. Let's hear actually one last piece of this. Will be the final clip of Janny's interview. The final question they asked her that I'd like to talk to you about is if she believes the children are still alive. Here it comes.
If something bad happens, you get like your heart drops. Mine hasn't dropped. Deep down in my heart, I do believe Jack and Lilly are alive. It's not because of what people are saying. It's my heart tells me that they are alive.
Again,
I hope her heart is right in this one.
Me too. Like I can't relate because I have such terrible anxiety that like I automatically assume the worst. I have worried on every corner of this globe irrationally. So yeah, it's nice that she is so what word am I looking for here? Like she's confident in her intuition. And yeah, I hope to God she's right.
The problem with intuition, when you're that close to the story, like your heart, as a defense mechanism, is going to tell you, my son's not involved, the kids are okay, this is going to end well.
Yes.
Because the alternative is just,
Oh.
you would lose your mind. So it's hard to put a lot of faith in your heart. Like
You're right.
those questions, we want to hear them answered, but in reality, they're almost unfair questions.
They are.
She is never going to answer and say, yeah, I think, I don't know for sure. Like, my son could be involved. Like, that never is going to happen, even if she thought it.
That one was a rhetorical question for sure.
And then asking if you think the children are still alive. I guess she could answer that honestly, but I think, like, if she thought they weren't, she could answer it honestly, especially considering the fact that the RCMP have already said as much, a couple weeks after they went missing.
Right. So. Yeah. And like, there's lots of cases where the family knows that their loved one is no longer with us, but they still want to bring them home. Like, that's it. That doesn't change that answer.
Yeah, certainly.
So.
Let's take our final break. When we get back, there's still a little bit more of this interview to discuss. There's a couple statements that made it into the longer form print article that weren't captured in the video interview that I want to talk about. And it seems like the RCMP have addressed these statements in the form of a short press release. We'll get to that after this break. So I mentioned Madelayne is that there was the video interview with Janie McKenzie. We listened to some excerpts of it, but there was a few more statements attributed to her in the print article, one in particular that I wanted to talk about. I'm just going to read a short part of the article where they quote Janie, and then we'll hear the RCMP's response. So, reading from the article. In the beginning, Janie said her family was receiving regular updates about the investigation, but that has all but stopped in recent weeks, leaving her and Daniel Martel with many unanswered questions. She feels the case now lacks the urgency it deserves. So that's kind of the excerpt from the article. In their words, Janie is describing the case, a feeling that the case is either going colder or isn't a priority as it once was, and that they're not receiving the updates that they would like. When the press release that I read earlier at the beginning of this episode came out, there was a bit of a question and answer period that the RCMP allowed some questions to be answered about the case. And a reporter specifically asked them a question that I think came from this statement, basically asking, how do you address feelings that the case is lacking urgency? We can hear the RCMP answer that question now. I want you to listen very carefully to every word the RCMP officer says, because a part of their answer makes me think, is what they're saying that we're giving updates, just not necessarily to Daniel? Listen to this.
People close to the investigation have expressed concern that the case now lacks urgency. How do you respond to that?
An RCMP family liaison is in regular contact with a designated relative of Lilly and Jack. The RCMP family liaison provides ongoing updates and support to the family so that they are aware of what is going on with the investigation and the information that can be provided to them. The family liaison officer is a member of Major Crimes. So information is absolutely provided to the family through the people who have been designated to share those communications.
So you can take that a few ways. So she is saying that, speaking from the RCMP, on behalf of the RCMP, they're giving those updates to the people that are authorized to receive them. So she could be saying, A, we're giving the updates as we should be, and maybe they're just not happy with how many updates we're giving. Or she could be saying, B, we're giving the updates, but she wouldn't necessarily know about them, or he wouldn't necessarily know about them because we're giving them just to the people that are designated. And maybe that isn't Daniel or Janie.
And that's the way I took it. I was definitely an option B.
For anyone who listens to this series knows, or anyone who follows RCMP communication strategies, they're very careful and deliberate with what they say. And she said twice in that answer, for people who are authorized to receive it. So she's making it clear that we're not answering everyone, or we're not telling this to everyone, just to the people who are authorized to receive it. And the way the question was phrased and put to her, it seems to me to be asked in response to this statement by Janie McKenzie that she feels the case is lacking urgency, because it's word for word about the idea of lacking urgency. So I feel like this is their response to that statement in the article.
Oh, definitely. What we have to remember is Daniel Martel is still their stepfather.
Mm-hmm.
There is no biological relation there. And as much as he may love those children, he's technically not their parent.
Yeah, I wonder what.
So he's probably not authorized to get updates.
Maybe not, but it would be, or he may need to like get fight it, get a court order or something like that. Because of course, Malaya, being the biological mom, she's going to have access to information. The biological dad, although he isn't in the children's life, he could probably make a case for it pretty easily.
Probably.
Daniel would have a harder time.
Yeah.
But that said, the whole idea of common law and marriage and all these things, like that could come into play. But
yeah.
I don't know if common law marriage, even if they were, doing taxes as common law and in the eyes of the law were common law, I still don't know if that gives you any kind of like responsibility or authority over the kids in terms of this.
Like, unless he legally adopted them, I don't think that's how that works. But I don't know.
All we do know is, according to Daniel's mother at this point, is that they don't believe they're receiving the updates they want, and that they feel that the case is lacking urgency. The RCMP's response specifically is mentioning designated people. So I don't know. I read between the lines. I'm thinking like maybe there's some question about if Daniel needs to know what's going on in this case.
Oh yeah. I would love to see like visually in the RCMP office, because they've probably got this massive board the size of a wall, and it's got everyone they've interviewed and how they're all connected, and it's just a big tangled web. But I would love to see it, because I bet it's quite fascinating.
Yeah. But all this to say, we're now 13 weeks out. Credible developments are few and far between, but stuff is still happening. People are still coming forward and speaking publicly. The RCMP is keeping us up to date with their investigation to the extent that they can. But I don't know where this is gonna go next. Like, I think until there's a major arrest, development, update, I don't know what else we're gonna hear. And I think that fact is also, I think, tying the media's hands behind their back, because they can't just be, releasing weekly news pieces about how this is happening. Like the case will go silent if things aren't happening publicly. The series of CBC interviews that we heard, like the biological father's mom, Daniel Martel, had a sit down. We had the RCMP communications person. Now we have Daniel's mom, Janie McKenzie, speaking to CBC. These interviews have really fueled the discussion and the media coverage of this case over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Now that these interviews are done, what's next?
What else is there?
Well, what there is an interview with Malaya or her family. And according to CBC, they mentioned it in the article, is that she has declined to give interviews.
And she has every right to do so.
I know, but I am critical of it.
Yeah.
I think at this point, it's so many questions towards her. I can understand why she's not on Facebook or on a YouTube live stream with someone, but this series of interviews we heard on CBC with all of these people, I think have all been fair and have answered a lot of questions for the public. I think a sit-down CBC interview with Kayla Hounsell from CBC and Malaya Brooks Murray, or even Malaya's mom or something, I think that would really help people understand this story.
I think so too, but on the other hand, she doesn't owe the public anything.
Yeah, I get that, but the public is going to stop hearing about this case if more people don't come out and talk, or some major development from the RCMP.
Oh, yeah.
So even, people will say Malaya should be, hanging up posters and protesting and, in public. I can understand why she doesn't want to do that. But a CBC interview with Malaya Brooks Murray would have a whole lot of people talking about this case again, and it would fuel the discussion for a week or more, and it maybe would help direct the discussion in a factual way rather than this meandering fan fiction nonsense that is predominantly discussed at this point.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but you got a point. You're right.
I'm right. But all this to say, the discussion, the case continues to be compelling. things are happening. It's just taking time. But I think as long as things keep happening, we'll be here to discuss it, and we'll follow this until there's an answer, which I hope is soon.
I never would have guessed we would be here 13 weeks later.
This can't someone can't scoop up 2 kids and get away with it.
No.
In the year 2025, where we are surrounded by surveillance and everything else, and all of our movements are tracked by our phones, and
Right?
someone can't get away with this, and I think it's clear someone did something.
Oh, there's no argument there. But who did what?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, let's put a bow on the conversation for now, and we'll continue this when the next series of developments happen.
Which is hopefully soon.
I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Nighttime. But before I end the episode, I want to send positive vibes to everyone affected by this case. And I also want to call out to anyone close to the case to reach out to me. I'd be happy to add your voice to this show if you care to speak with me. Now, with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up the episode, but before we part, let me end with some thanks. First, a big thanks to Madelayne for sharing another evening with me and with you, the listeners of Nighttime. A shout out to Monty, Datta, who contributes the music to this show, and Linz from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides my intro and outro voiceovers. And then lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to each and every one of you listening to the show. Without your interest and your support, Nighttime would be about as pointless as it would be impossible. And on the topic of support, I'd like to thank the newest subscribers to the Nighttime Podcast Premium feed. Brianna, the very generous and supportive Kay, and Ashley, we appreciate you. And for anyone else out there who'd like to support the show, you can help us out in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those new episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a back catalog of episodes. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium at nighttimepodcast.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know they should listen. If anyone out there has any story ideas, wants to give feedback on the show, or would like to share their thoughts on this case, you can do all that and more at nighttimepodcast.com/contact. I'm excited to hear from you. But until then, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte.